what
La
this music
Lupa,
really
and I'm like,
is.
I don't know what a La Lupa
La
is, but
Lupe,
I'm
La
La
Lupe.
Lupe. I'm rolling with it
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
this story's real
All right.
good. No context, but I can Google it after. It was in my head.
So we'll start from the islands, right? The Caribbean, right? You have this mass exodus of Puerto Ricans leaving the island in the 1940s and 50s. You have Cubans coming up into South Florida and then up to New York City, and they're moving into these ghettos, right? They're moving into impoverished neighborhoods that they can afford to live in. These are working class people, but these are also career musicians coming from their own islands, coming from living a farm life or a poor life where they would play campesino music. Campesino music is like folktale music, right? Where they would play the cuatro. The cuatro is a specific type of guitar. It's like a small form factor
Mm.
guitar, and it's a very unique
It's
sound.
almost similar. A person who wouldn't know would see it and maybe think like, oh, it's a little bit of bigger ukulele, and it's like, no,
Right,
it's not a bigger ukulele.
right,
But yes, technically speaking, you are right. It would be a little bit bigger than a ukulele, but it's not a
right.
ukulele. Yeah, but yeah,
Uh, so you
people can
have
get a
them
picture in
coming.
their
You
head.
have them coming up from these islands. A lot of them are coming into the military, right? They're going out into PR and they're drafting these men to come into the military to fight for the United States. Um, during the World War, during the various conflicts that they're having, because as you may or may not know, Puerto Rico is a commonwealth
Yeah.
of the United States, and there's a sordid history that we could get into in terms of like El Borinquen and like the independence of our island and like the long battle for us to kind of break the colonial chain. But I won't delve too crazy in there. We'll talk about this musical journey and how these people come from farms singing songs about their cow or the woman that they lost or like what it's like to like get up and farm the land. And these are kind of our folk tales and our folk music, right? And they come to America, and there's this jazz movement happening, right, with black jazz musicians. A very similar thing is happening with the Cuban community coming into New York City at that time as well. And there's this kind of big band sound at the time, right? This is, the 50s era where everything was big bag, Cab Calloway, and there's a gentleman by the name of Machito. Machito is a black African Cuban Spanish speaking man who comes into New York City, and he puts together the first big band Latin orchestra, right? So they're taking this big band sound and they're taking this peasant, almost farm music, and they're blending the jazz and all of this what we would call, it's like a sancocho. It's like a pot, a melting pot where they're
Sancocho
throwing
is
in these
like
different sounds.
gumbo. It
Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
contains
Yeah. This
like
makes sense.
any soup that has a lot of
Different
ingredients in it,
ingredients.
which is what all impoverished people usually would always make their
Right. You throw your
whole full
scraps together.
meals that you could feed many with.
Fact. So Machito becomes kind of the gold standard in terms of fusing this music together, this folk music, this jazz music, and creating this new sound, right? This new sound that is about, it's about dancing, it's about getting cleaned up in your best and coming out to the concert hall, because that's what they had at the time in New York City, and bringing these Latin communities together, but also bringing some of that African and Black community together under this new music form. I can't say that there weren't white people involved. It was about the music and the rhythm. And this was a
Right.
new sound that came up, this mambo sound, right? And this mambo sound was based on the clave, right? And the clave, the rhythm of the clave is like ba 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 ba, and that becomes the metronome, the foundational rhythm that we build this mambo, which eventually becomes the salsa culture of New York City, that then goes global, right? When I say that, I mean you go to Senegal right now, and there's bands that are playing salsa music, Latin mambo music that's derivative of New York and Cuba and the Puerto Ricans, and now are doing it in African, right? Because there's this Yoruban drum conga undertone in all of our music. So we take this conga, this African drum, and we fuse that with the horns. We fuse that with the big band, violins, the piano. And you get this beautiful, one of a kind, unique, soulful cultural movement coming out of New York City in the 1970s, 60s, into 80s, that is its own culture, and my family, my aunts, my three aunts were lucky enough to be New Yorkers, young, into the music at this time, and so they're fully immersed in this sound. And so when I talk about that sound and that dance rhythm and that party, it's based on that mambo salsa, right? And there becomes a premier label that comes out of all of these different concert halls, and that label is Fania, Fania. And the Fania All Stars become kind of like the premier band. This is after Machito, right? There's other people that come in. There's Ruben Blades, there's Eddie Palmieri, there's Larry Harlow, there's Tito Puente, there's Celia Cruz. All of these people are on this one label. So it's like you have all of the top musicians in this musical genre on the same label, and they're working together to create bodies of music that are still celebrated today. Like
almost like a
Spotify
Motown on steroids.
fact. That's 100% facts. And then you get what we call our soneros, right? Our soneros are our singers, right? But our singers they're freestyle artists as well, right? So they're talking about their pains, their woes, their strife, the strife of being a working class person, and they're singing and they're writing songs, but they will also get on stage, and in the middle of the song, the beat breaks, and they'll hit a whole freestyle, and they'll be like, mommy in the front row, da 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 da, and this vibration and this frequency is like the chain that I feel connected to. And that I try to make sure is present in everything that I do. And part of, like I said, my DNA, yes, but also the way that I was nurtured and raised, because there's a difference between like nature and nurture, right? And so Fania is this premier label. Every concert that they have, my mom is going with her sisters. They're coming home with the vinyl. The vinyl's coming out in local mom and pop shops in Harlem, in the Lower East Side, in the Bronx, and all of these different urban areas where the folks that support this musical genre are living. And that takes off into a worldwide movement, as I said earlier. And so, like, when I came out the womb, that's what was bumping, on the record player, right? Because we were doing vinyls, you know what I'm saying? So that said, that's my mom's generation. Her mother, right, grandma, my grandfather, are into the old school version of that, which are called boleros. Boleros are, help me out, Flock.
They're
Jams?
like basically
Slow jams?
Slow jams, yeah. I was gonna say slow jams, where it's basically super ballads.
Ballads, yes.
Boleros are like ballads.
Usually